Hi guys, I'm going to review genetics with a little story I like to call Once Upon a Time, You Were a Zygote. So we have discussed a lot of genetics and where your traits are inherited from, and we have discovered that most of your traits, the ones that you actually inherit, come from your parents, and 50% of your genetic material comes from each of your biological parents. So let's take a look. Um, Once upon a time, girl meets boy. Okay. She's very funny, and he is a musician, and he loves rock and roll music, and she loves that. And he loves her purple hair and her freckles, and she loves his dimples and his blue curly locks. And they fall in love. And before you know it, they decide to start a family. So, the genetic material or your sex cells are different for males and females, and we know that from our last unit. So, males produce sperm and females produce egg cells. And this number 23 has a significance. This is half of the DNA or half of the genetic material representing 23 of these things called chromosomes in the sperm cell and 23 in the egg cell. So, I told you the story was once upon a time you were a zygote. So, here you are, a zygote. So during this process of fertilization, this is when all of the chromosomes, half or 50% from mom and 50% from dad, unite inside the nucleus of one cell. That is a fertilized egg or a zygote. Continuing on, obviously we talked about this mitosis. So you're going to increase in the amount of cells, and then you're going to differentiate. But once upon a time, you were a zygote, and that's where you got your recipe for who you are. Again, 50% came from the egg, 50% came from the sperm. I just wanted to tell you a little fun fact. We use 23 all the time, and we kind of get used to it, but rabbits, they don't have the same number in their body cells, okay, all of their cells. They were a zygote too, but their zygote, okay, their body cells, any cell that I pick, let's say a skin cell of a rabbit, only has 44 chromosomes total, okay? So instead of 23, that would mean they had 22 and 22. Okay, so whatever species we're talking about is going to have a unique number of chromosomes. So, of course, we use humans as examples a lot. So, 23 is a good thing to know for humans in our sex cells, and 46, but be careful if we talk about something else. All right, so that's when you got your recipe, when you were a zygote, when you were a fertilized egg, and that recipe stayed in that cell and copied itself and copied itself and copied itself and copied itself and copied itself. If I go into, okay, one nucleus of any of your cells, I'm going to find these things called chromosomes. These things called chromosomes, there are 23 of them, you told me. There are 46 total, 23 pairs, excuse me. You can think of them like shoes, okay? So if these are boots, these are sneakers, these are the same. So what happens is you got, and blue's going to represent for now from dad, and red's going to represent from mom. So you got one of each pair from each parent. So if I were to look at these, and this is called a karyotype, by the way, they're not organized like this, okay, not like your shoe closet. They're actually scattered around in the nucleus, and I'll show you what they usually look like, kind of like a plate of spaghetti when you pull the DNA together. They only do this when they're going to replicate or make a new cell. So 46 chromosomes. So let's now look at a chromosome. So on the chromosome, they have these banding patterns, okay? These banding patterns represent one gene. A gene is a piece or a segment of DNA. So let's look at some of the traits that you could have possibly inherited from your parents. So mom had freckles, dad we saw had blue hair, and mom had purple hair, and the dimples were present in only dad. Okay, so if I look at the chromosome from mom, she's going to give a little F, and dad's going to give a little F. And when we put your genotype together, once upon a time you were a zygote, you're going to have the genotype little f, little f. So you have freckles. Okay, so maybe you have freckles like this boy over here. Okay, he got his freckles from his mom. Let's look at the next trait. Let's look at his hair color. Okay, so mom was able to give big B, dad little b, and so he got his blue hair because it's dominant. Maybe he got his dimples from his father. Okay, so mom gave little d, dad gave big D, and he got his dimples. Okay, so his genotype, and you can look at each trait individually with this magical creation called a Punnett Square. Okay, where I take mom's genotype over here, and then I take dad's, and I find out what is the probability of me getting these traits. Okay, so if I wanted to know the probability of getting or being a hybrid for Dimples, like she is, okay, then I would say 50%, okay, because these both have dimples. And since he didn't get the dimples, and it's recessive, he also had a 50% chance. So we use a Punnett Square to figure that out. Don't forget each one of these is a quarter, okay, like money. So 25, 50, 75, 100, and you only count inside for offspring. This is the parents. All right, so let's carry on our story. So if I were to go back, and let's just go back. So now we are inside, one of your cells, right, in the nucleus, looking at a chromosome, 46 of them. Now we're looking at one specific, and they're numbered when they make this photograph. So I pulled out one. Having the traits, the genes. If I were to unravel, okay, this chromosome, that was like a ball of yarn, condensed, okay, tightly packed together. And that's helpful because when you're copying something, it's easier to copy something if it's condensed, okay? Think about even if you were making a copy. If you had to go and look for random pages and they were all over the place, that would be really hard for you to make sure you made a copy of everything. But if you had them all nice in a book and you said, I'm going to go page by page, that would be easier for you to copy. So that's what your cells basically do. They condense things into these chromosomes. But if I unravel the chromosome, I would see this big molecule, this double helix, okay? Each of these is bases. They pair together. And this molecule, if I take a piece of it, it is your code. So one piece of it, the entire thing, codes for all your traits, like one big recipe. It's the code for your proteins and your traits. So if I pull out one little piece and segment, this order of these bases is actually the recipe. This is what it tells me to do. I'm going to make freckles. This is the code. So this is the gene, this is the segment, this is the piece of DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, that codes for your traits. Remember I told you it was in the nucleus? That's for a reason too. We want to keep it really, really protected. So not only do we have the cell membrane around it, we also have it inside another membrane. Really, really protected because your recipe, your code, it could get changed. And that could be a problem. It sometimes could happen from things in your environment. Okay, so you have to keep these things away. Be very careful. Keep out. Okay, chemical exposure, poisons, radiation, toxins in the environment, smoking. These are things cause cancer. They cause mutations. Mutations are random changes in your DNA. The sun, UV exposure, random changes in your DNA. So if I had this code, TAGC, and it makes freckles, but now I added and I changed it, I'm missing something. I have damaged it by these random changes or mutations. I'm going to see new traits show up. They're not always bad. Mutations don't always cause bad things, but they do cause a change. So something different in your DNA. I just want to go back to the story. Before this lovely couple met, okay, there was a whole family from each side. And so if he wanted to see where did my son actually get his freckles from, since I don't have any freckles, he could create something called a pedigree. Okay, so the pedigree traces one trait at a time. So if we did freckles, and I'll give you the key or the code on the bottom. So if the person does not have if the person is not showing the recessive trait, okay, they are not going to be colored in. So anytime you see that, you're going to color or shade it in. So carrier is half, okay? So if it has one little F, but it is carrying, it has a capital F, but it's carrying it, it's going to be passed on, okay? So this is showing you if they have it. So she has the trait, okay? So you can see it, and then it gets passed on. Okay, so you can see that the son did get it from his mom, but he also got it from his dad, even though he doesn't show it because he's carrying it, which he got from his parents. Okay, so we did a lot of talk about pedigree, so that was just a brief, explanation of everything in genetics that you need to know. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day.